Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Soulbinds and Conduits for Shadowlands. So this has been a big hot topic of discussion lately, very recently here, and I've been holding off myself because I wanted to kind of see it for myself first, and I just couldn't hold off any longer. I went to the calculator on the Wowhead website here, shout out to Wowhead. And I just looked up all the different soul binds, all the different paths, and all that kind of stuff. And I was a little bit surprised because it wasn't as doom and gloom as what it's been made out to be. I do see some potential issues, and I'll get into that, of course. So let's hurry up and go through what the soul binds even are, and then what conduits are, and everything like that. So in Shadowlands, you're going to be able to choose from four different covenants. You have Kyrian, Necrolord, Night Fae, and Venthyr. And you're going to choose those, and then in each of those you have three possible soul binds, and some of them are really straightforward, and some of them are not. And you're going to choose the soul bind based best on what you're playing, right? So, or what's best for you, the way you play. It's not all about throughput for everybody. So those are going to be your main choices for the expansion. You're going to choose your covenant, and then you're going to choose your soul bind within your covenant. The main fear here is that one soul bind is just going to be the best. Like, all tanks are going to play Necrolord, all DPS are going to play Venthyr, all healers are going to play Kyrian. Just, I don't know if any of that's accurate. I just am using examples there. That's the fear, but I feel like that's the part that they probably will get right. And what I mean by that is, so we have 12 total soul binds. I believe they will probably be balanced similar to how racials are balanced. So there will be a best, there will be a best tank, there will be a best DPS, there will be a best healing, and there will be a worst, but they'll be in a general range of each other that it shouldn't make your choice like you have to do this no matter what. For example, I'm not going to call anyone out by name because I'm not looking to throw shade or anything, but there was a talk about what the 1% is of players. Suggested if you do cutting edge at all, you're definitely in the 1%, even if you're kind of casual. That's what my guild is. We're like a casual cutting edge guild. We get cutting edge, but we do it fairly casually, right? We're not hardcore 2 nights a week. We don't. Not everybody picks their class and their race based upon the just best throughput. So even though I guess I'm technically, according to that definition, in that group, and it's not technically 1% of people, it's like just the people that do cutting edge, do high end PvP, do really high mythic keystones, that kind of stuff. But not all of them are worried about every little thing. I know there are some people that do that, and that'll be a shame because you will probably box yourself in there. But that's a very, very small. That's a percent of the 1%, in my opinion, based upon the interactions I have with other people who do the same kind of content that I do. So that is the case. So we'll be best or we'll be worst. That's the case in everything in life. If the top person in a math class gets 100 and the bottom person gets a 95, that bottom person is the worst person in class for that test, even though they still got an A, right? So just as long as they're balanced somewhat, like racials are, then I think that'll be fine. I think they can figure that part out. So then the bigger issue is, and what has moved on to be the issue, is these conduits. So I don't know if I have cursor recording or not, but on the screen right now we're in Kyrian and Pelagos. This is what I'm planning on playing as a rep paladin as of right now, without knowing anything about how exactly the conduits will be, what the conduits exactly are and stuff. This is what I'm tentatively planning on playing. So you start with an ability at the top. This is going to give you versatility. Your main bottom ability will give you mastery, and then you have like a bunch of utility in this case throughout with conduits linking them. The conduits will give you like more damage or whatever you want to put in there. It could be utility as well if you choose that. So for me, it seems simple. If I do end up playing this, I do one path. So let's say left. I go left first. The best single target is blue, a blue conduit. Go down, put in whatever the best general yellow one is, go to blue again, go down, put whatever the best general red one is, and then get my final one. And then on this way, go single target to, or if I just want single target, then multi-target, sorry, do the opposite down the other side of the pathway there. So then I have two pathways that I can choose from. You can choose what pathway you're using, and I won't have to destroy anything that way, technically. Now, if I really wanted to, I could just put a yellow one in that was the best, that fit that group better, and red's going to be red's going to be the even better one because it has 3 in this, so I could stack that even more technically if it was the best for single target or multi-target. But that's my general plan right now without knowing exactly how they work. So that's a really simple solution, but that's for a rep paladin, which is not that's not going to be the issue. And then also there in Kyrian, it's also fairly obvious. There's a healing one, there's a tanking one, and there's one that's more damagey than others. This isn't necessarily damage, but it would be the one that I would choose as of right now. So that makes it easy. But let's get into what the actual issues could be. So I laid out how simple it could be for a class with 1 DPS spec, right? But it could be a lot more difficult than that. So this is the one that everyone's using as an example here, this Nadia. So, and that's because it has actually 2 different pathways, and it's unsure which one's even better. It also has a DPS trait there, has multiple DPS traits, does have the utilities as well. And they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because there's only 2 full pathways you can do, unless I guess you could do 3 if that counts as 3, but you're only gonna have 2 options at the top and then 3 at the bottom here. But the big issue is, what if you play a pure DPS class, and let's say this Dauntless Duelist is way better than Exacting Preparation, for example. You can't put all your pathways through this side for all of your DPS specs, and then also, not only do you have 3 DPS specs, but you also have multiple things, like I said with Ret Paladin, multi-target, single target. That's a simple way to put it, but some people do boss cleave spec, some people do, multi-single target spec, like you're jumping from single target to single target to single target. There's multiple ways in groups, and this could be an issue. The way I could see it not being an issue is if the conduits end up being somewhat similar, first of all, and not like if you do have to destroy them, it's not hard. You just put another one in, and you're not losing much damage from it. And then the other thing is, if this ends up being too good, like let's say this Dauntless Duelist is too good, just as an example here, because this is just because this is the one a lot of people are using. Let's say Dauntless Duelist ends up being too good, then they just have to nerf it, and that becomes simple. And you nerf it to kind of more balance in line with the Exacting Preparation or other abilities for other covenants, right? Because you don't want everyone playing Venthyr anyways. You want a nice mixture. So you just nerf that ability. Now there still could be issues though, because you're still dealing with things where you need to have other options for other specs. So let's say you're a warlock. Let's just say, since it's already up, that this Nadia is the best for demo, but then it's also the best for affliction and I shouldn't have used warlock first of all because I don't know their thing. Let's just use hunter, beast mastery, survival, and marksman. So let's say this is the best for all 3 of them. That could possibly be an issue because you might want different conduits in. But if the conduits are just generalized, once again, it won't matter as much. So as long as the conduits aren't very specific and dealing tons of power, like adding tons of power to your character, it won't matter as much. So if this is just, let's say, going down the right side is just the most powerful thing, then it won't matter what ones you have in. That would be the best case scenario. However, if there is like, let's say in this case a blue one that's just the most powerful AoE, but like everything else you want to go down this right side for, it's going to feel bad to go left there and you miss out on that, so then you actually lower damage even though this is the best one. It could be a very awkward thing where you can't do everything you want without destroying a relic, or a conduit. So you would destroy a yellow single target one and put the second best one to blue in over here just to go down that path. That's an example of some issues you could run into with full DPS or pure DPS classes. You can mitigate that easily by changing around the power, so nerfing or buffing others. A lot of people say buff other things, don't nerf things. So in this example, you would nerf Dauntless Duelist to where it's just not the best one no matter what. So maybe you could play Night Fae or Necrolord or Kyrian or something straightforward. You just want their power to be generally the same, and that's easy as far as just the Soulbinds go, but it's not easy when you're talking every single spec for every single class. Because it's also possible that Pelagos could be the best for Beast Mastery or something. I'm just making examples again. And then Nadja is the best for Marksman, right? So like that's an example of something that could happen as well. And then you can't do that because that's a different covenant, and you're stuck in your covenant. So you're gonna have to make the best of with what you got. In my opinion, I'm actually optimistic for it. I tried to lay out the problems because I know people see these problems as well and are worried about them. But I'm actually optimistic about it because I think it's already kind of figured out. Like for a class like Paladin, where you do one of each thing, tank, healer, DPS, it's absolutely obvious. Especially like the Kyrian setup is extremely obvious what to do. Like it's very little thinking involved. You just do it, get your power, and go do your stuff. And you know, assuming they're all somewhat equal, right? Obviously, if it comes to be that Kyrian sucks and I can't play it, then I won't play that. And that does stink. But I don't think that will happen. I think that will be the one thing that doesn't happen. I think what might happen is people being frustrated because they have too many different things they want to do. They want to have all those different types of setups that I was talking about with, boss cleave, multi-single target, mass AoE, straight single target patchwork. It's just all kinds of different setups that they want to have. And it might be impossible to do the best possible routing on the trees without best possible routing without destroying a conduit and replacing it with another one, and that could be the issue. You just have to limit the power from the talents and abilities given from these from the Soulbinds. That's the only way to really truly make sense here. Again, Venthyr's a little weird because there's multiple of them that are actually pretty decent for damage, whereas, like I said, with Kyrian, it's pretty obvious what to do there, where it's very straightforward. I think Night Fae is kind of like that as well. Can't remember by heart, but I did go through all of them. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm fairly optimistic. I think it's already fine. I did a tweet about this. It's already fine for like tanks, healers, and like one spec DPS class, and kind of fine for two spec DPS classes like warriors, for an example, or shaman. Kind of okay for them. I'm not saying it's definitely going to be okay, but for single spec DPS for tanks and healers, the only thing tanks and healers could run into is tanks and healers at the very high end mythic pluses. They like to min-max their damage as well, even though that's not, for a casual player, you might not be thinking that that damage is the most important thing for healers and tanks, but it really is. When it's not the most important, but it's a very important thing at the very high end. So those people could possibly run into some issues, but not necessarily. I think you choose the best tanking one for yourself, and then you have a damage soulbind that you use to do damage as well, and choose the utility / tanking talents and put the conduits in that do damage for you, or vice versa. Put the tanking conduits in and choose the damage talents. You can do either or of those things. So I think there are ways around that. Same thing with healing. It's really the pure DPS specs that might have the biggest issues. I've thought of maybe they could make it so you have multiple options. Like you could buy for gold and a fairly trivial amount of gold. You wouldn't want to bankrupt somebody for this, but you buy like a second slot of the same Soulbind. So let's go to Pelagos, the one that I'm thinking about playing. So I would have this, and this would have like a 1 on it, and then I could buy a second tab, and I could activate the second tab. So on this one, on my number 1 tab, I could have a single target, multi-target setup, and on my number 2 tab, I could have a boss cleave setup, and it might have like a open world setup, like where I'm just like world PvP and doing world quests and crap like that. So I technically would have 4 setups, all with Pelagos in that case, and I think that could be a great option if they could pull that off, and that would mitigate a lot of it. Even for those pure DPS classes, by having multiple options, I think you would end up having to have basically 3 tabs to do everything, and even that wouldn't necessarily do everything, but it would mostly give you all the options. So basically, if you commit to playing Pelagos, all I want to, as a player, you'd say, all I want is all the options of playing Pelagos. I don't want to be restricted to 2 options unless I destroy my conduits. So you would need to have as many tabs as would allow you to play all your options, and you would have to insert the conduits into each tab. You can't just this would be something you earn as you go along. You would earn having 6 setups or whatever. Like, you wouldn't just log in day 1 and have all these setups. You would gradually build to them or something like that. In my made up scenario here, and I don't necessarily think Blizzard's going to do that. I think what's going to happen is these are going to be nice, as they call borrowed power things that don't actually do that much power, and by keeping them at a low general power, it'll be easier to keep them equal. That's what I think will end up being. I don't think it's going to be like essences, where it's just like a huge added power in the middle, and then corruption, which was like a gigantic added power. Like, this is going to be a very base level power, like Azerite. So like, think tier 1 of Battle of Azeroth, where first of all, everyone hated the Azerite, but our DPS was super low at that point, right? Like, I don't even know what it was, like 10k or something, and all this added power later on came. So this is the first stage of it. This is not going to be super strong, and therefore there's not going to be huge differences between them. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm cautiously optimistic. I do hear the worries, especially from the pure DPS players, especially from the very, 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 very high-end players. So I'm talking about at least Hall of Fame, like Mythic Raiders, at least like people who, if they're not doing MDI, they're like thinking about doing it or trying to get the highest score possible on Raider.io, or like the very highest PvP players, although I think PvP is going to be slightly easier with this system, honestly. But if you're the very, very highest player, I could see your issue there, because I understand how many setups you have. And if you are just a pure DPS player, I could understand you being wary as well, because you might have a ton of setups as well for all of your different DPS options. And if you're tied into one Soulbind, like if you can't use all 3 in your Covenant because one of them is purely a tank or something, or purely a healer, then you can't use that one as a DPS one, obviously, except for like to do some like Mimi type situation. Like, obviously you could do something silly as like a tank that also like can self heal and use a healing Soulbind to do like extra healing on yourself. Like, of course you could do stuff like that, but that's not necessarily what you're gonna want to do for the highest possible or best possible outcome. So overall, like I said, cautiously optimistic. I hear your worries. I hear everyone's worries about this. As of now, I think there's much to do about nothing. Beta's going to come out. We're going to get a chance to try this stuff, and we'll know for sure then how it feels. I think there's already a narrative put out that it's going to be bad. So even if it's not that bad, I think my prediction would be people still say it is. But we'll see. I think it's going to be fine for most of the players anyways. And we'll see here in a few days when beta comes out. So that's my thoughts on this. I know it's a long, rambling video, but again, I'm not super worried myself. So please subscribe to the channel if you stuck with me this long. And other than that, everybody have a good one.